Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Solar Opposites. Okay, so in this episode, the Solar Opposites go on a vacation that winds up going a little bit weird, and while they're doing that, we actually check in on the wall and what's going on in there. And this episode explains why there's a centipede in the lower levels. It kind of just explains what's been going on down there. But so in any case, I'm going to start with the A plot here because the A plot is kind of fun. But the A plot starts off with Terry and the replicants being asleep in the middle of the night when they suddenly hear a very loud guitar riff, and of course they come downstairs to discover that apparently the Solar Opposites have actually gone through 100 episodes, and that Corvo woke them up in the middle of the night to tell them that. And of course, after finding out that they were officially getting along, and Yamalak even comments on the fact that he isn't particularly happy about the particularly rude awakening, but he also points out that he'll live to deal with it because he obviously they're not really arguing much anymore. But he does point, but they then go, but of course Terry points out that they actually need to go on to actually find a way to celebrate, and of course Corvo then proceeds to reveal that he actually has the perfect thing, which is that they're going to go to a resort called Mountain Lake Lodge, which of course is just a fancy hotel in town in tourist town in the middle of the woods. And of course they go on to go investigate. They're planning to go there and go on a fancy vacation, since they apparently haven't been there 2 years. And they then proceed to get into the car, even though Jesse points out that the hover platform would actually be a lot faster. But Corvo merely responds that they're actually going to be unplugging a bit on this trip, and does point out that he's more than that he's actually given them all to the neighborhood next door, who immediately uses them to stop his parents from divorcing and basically just catering to his every whim, which of course is a problem that never actually gets addressed. But they then go off to go on vacation, and in the car they actually do go on. Terry actually winds up inventing something called mayo fries, which as you might guess are fries covered in mayonnaise. That's essentially what they are. But yeah, he gets in the. But yeah, in any case, they eventually arrive at Mountain Lake Lodge, and Mountain Lake Lodge is actually a very beautiful, very scenic place in the middle of the woods. But then there is some obvious, very ominous music that plays when it's supposed to be a cheerful thing, and sure enough, they arrive there, and Corvo reveals that they actually are planning to pay everybody in diamonds, which yeah, that's really the only sci-fi thing they brought with them, is something that they can use to pay people with. And sure enough, diamonds are probably one of the more valuable things you can pay somebody with, so they can make a lot of, so yeah. And that winds up becoming important, I'll get to that, but in case Jesse then pays the bellhop to take their stuff away, and he does so happily, even addressing her by name, which she remarks is true service. And it's at this point where they actually run into a family called the Johnsons, which of course which quickly wind up striking up a friendship with the Solar Opposites, and of course immediately start hitting it off and become fast friends. And Corvo walks over to wonder what the hell's going on, but then Terry explains that they met the Johnsons and that they're going to be their vacation friends, and of course Corvo is very happy about the fact that they get to have vacation friends, and sure enough, they get to do some fun. They get to go on to do all the things that you would do on a vacation together. They go on to go and find what is it? They go on to just go buy souvenirs, go shopping, go riding around on the water park, all the old fun of the fair, and all those other different things. And of course, at which point, Terry and Corvo then sit down at a mayo fry shop, which Terry points out, obviously very much lampshades the fact that he just invented them and they've already got a shop, which does make him happy. And it's at this point where they actually wind up where Terry and Corvo wind up going through town, and they see a train exhibit, which of course the woman running the train exhibit tells them that she'd be very happy if they actually went and came and check it out. But then we find out that actually Corvo and Terry have effectively given up trains for obvious reasons if you saw the episode. So they also start arguing, but then the Johnsons actually wind up breaking it up, and the two of them go off to go drink some tiki drinks and go off to do other things. And the woman running the train shop, running the train exhibit, merely tells somebody else through her microphone that they've got a problem. And it quickly becomes apparent that there's something sinister going on. And sure enough, when Terry and Corvo come back later that day, they do come by and have done a couple of other things since then. But then they come back and note that that the thing that used to be a train exhibit is now the House of Betrayals. And she brings them and she then proceeds to show them around. And they do look around for some of their more iconic. And sure enough, it does show some of the more iconic betrayals, such as Julius Caesar getting stabbed and a couple of other iconic ones. But of course, they start poking around, and then, disturbingly enough, in full audio and animatronic glory, the Terry and Corvo then discover an animatronic exhibit of Corvo getting railed by the Red Goobler, which is just a thing that happened, and apparently is something that Terry is still very much upset about. As we find out, Terry is not happy about the fact that Corvo essentially cheated on him with the Red Goobler. He is not happy about that at all. And even though of course Corvo points out that Terry was over it and that it was a long time ago and that they promised to never speak of it again. But of course clearly did not happen, which of course clearly has not happened. But of course they decide to just move on, where they discover yet another scene where as we find out, Terry ate Corvo's bag of Takis at one point. We see another exhibit depicting that, and of course Corvo is upset about that because apparently Terry lied to him and said the pupa ate them, which of course, as we know now, didn't actually happen. And of course Terry merely points out that he was working through their feelings, but does point out that he was trying to eat food to drown out his feelings. But of course the two of them become angry and then just with each other and then decide to leave. And of course, the woman running what was formerly a train shop come out and said that phase 1 has been complete. But it's at this point where, as we find out, the next thing that they do is that Yumulak and Jesse have actually entered a skiing competition with the two kids from the Johnson family. One of which is named Danielle, and as they're about to get ready to go on the slopes, Danielle decides to pull Yumulak into a hug and wishes him the best of luck. But then whispers in his ear to get out, which of course, Yumulak points out is very strange, but her brother merely tells him that it's nothing to worry, and that's nothing to worry about, and that she just means get out and go have a fun time. And of course they do, and Yumulak winds up winning the resort. He winds up winning the little skate thing, and was handed a trophy. But then notices that it says Funulak on it, which of course is his pretender deck person from the first season, which of course causes him to blow up at Jesse because obviously in that episode did not go well, and she even admits that she tried to kill him, but apparently Yumulak knows about the whole situation with Funulak, even though he wasn't actually there. And I'm not going to reiterate what happened in that episode. Go watch the episodes in the first season. It's the season finale of season 1. But go watch that one. But of course, because of that, the two of them then proceed to blow up at each other and then proceed to go off and leave. And of course, the brother then whispers that phase 2 is complete into his earpiece, but does point out that they need another Danielle. And of course, later that day, the Johnsons then proceed to invite the Solar Opposites out to dinner, and they all sit down, and Yumulak notices that something is different about Danielle, that she seems like a different person, and of course they all sit down, and the waiter comes up and not so subtly gives very coded messages regarding all of the Solar Opposites' problems with each other. And Terry doesn't and of course both Jesse and Yumulak know what's being said about them. Terry doesn't. He just hears, oh, that sounds like a neat treat I should try, and then immediately decides to order that. And of course the guy tells them, and of course the waiter leaves and then tells them to think about what they said, and which of course Corvo then notes is a little bit weird, and then starts looking around and notices that everybody in the restaurant has an earpiece, even a baby, comically enough. Which of course causes Corvo to realize that something very strange is going on, and then decides that actually he and his family are bushed and that they're going to turn in early. So they just leave, scoop up his family, and then he brings them back to the hotel room, with them not really understanding what's going on. But then he puts on all the Disney classics on the radio and turns it up to full volume, and then starts whispering, which obviously does not work because obviously they're trying to hear him over the sound of the music. But then he eventually explains what he believes is going on. That's he knows that everybody had an earpiece, and he thinks something strange is going on with the resort and that something sinister is happening. And of course, this causes them to actually go. Of course, this causes them to note if they had noticed anything strange. And of course, Terry does point out the obvious thing about he just invented mayo fries and that there's a restaurant for it, which he notes is weird. And then Yumulak points out the very obvious thing that he knows that Danielle is a completely different person, which of course Corvo blows up at him for, because obviously he didn't point it out in the moment, but Yumulak points out that he's bringing it up now, and that Corvo should be getting on him for it. And of course, realizing that they're clearly trapped in some sort of horror scenario, that he needs to just get them all out of there. He needs to get out as quickly. They need to get out as quickly as possible, and they proceed to immediately do that and proceed to get into the car to leave. But all of the other various tourists and people who run the attractions around the town, they immediately stop them and tell them not to leave. And of course, Corvo immediately floors it, and they get them out of there. But of course, then several oddly placed detours show up that prevent them from leaving, and eventually Corvo decides to say screw it and goes off road. And what we find out is that he apparently instructed Terry to design this, to invent the car, put the various things inside the car that would enable them to go off road. And but what we find out is that apparently Terry designed it around any possible off-road scenario. Since Corvo apparently didn't specify, so Corvo presses one of the buttons and they wind up ejecting skis from the bottom when they decide to abandon the car. And then it proceeds to eject all of its other off-road functions and knocks away several people. At which point the solar opposites then proceed to disguise themselves as trees as everybody walks past. And of course, it's this point where they actually undress as trees and other things. And their plan, and of course, Corvo points out that they need to figure out a way out of there. But Jesse points out that maybe that obviously this is a perfect opportunity to actually talk through the problem, since obviously the whole vacation has brought up the fact that they still have various core issues that they need to work out, and obviously they're going to need to talk them out at some point. So she figures, since they're in the middle of the woods hiding from people, they might as well now. But of course, Corvo takes it very sarcastically. He points out that obviously he's sorry for rejecting them all with childlike wonder and a whole bunch of other things. Which of course she isn't what Jesse's talking about, but she does point out that they need to work through their core issues. But of course, Yumulak then points out the obvious, that they can't stand here arguing, because eventually someone's going to hear them and eventually try and find them. So they points out that they're going to need to find a way to defend themselves. So they wonder if there's any way to actually do that. And Corvo then proceeds to point out that actually he remarks that while he did promise to actually abstain from a bunch of sci-fi shenanigans, they did wind up bringing their pocket lasers, which And he reveals that he does have a pocket laser, and that's the replicants never leave home without theirs. And it's at this point where they wonder if Terry actually brought something, and he reveals that he actually brought some handcuffs, which he points out is in case things got a little kinky, which of course Corvo points out he wishes that trip had actually gone a different way. But in any case, they then proceed to actually use their pocket lasers to make some makeshift weapons, and then proceed to drive back into town, who are trying to find the solar opposites, but are on the grounds that they are not allowed to kill them. And of course, it's at this point where the solar opposites then charge in, and as we find out, kill 30 people before taking one of the attraction lady hostage and pulling her onto the car under citizen's arrest. But At which point they demand to know what kind of horror type thing they're trapped in. At which point it's revealed that actually they're not trapped in any sort of horror type scenario. According to the Johnstons, the whole thing was never actually meant to be a horror scenario, but rather to cater to specifically to the solar opposites every whim. As we find out, because the solar opposites pay everybody in diamonds, they figured out that the people of Mountain Lodge Lake quickly just figured out that obviously that they would make a lot more money catering to the solar opposites rather than trying to bring in general tourism. And of course revealed that to that end they designed an algorithm to just flood and spam all their various feeds, including social media, which of course Jessie comments is apparently she got ads on her OnlyFans, which she points at, which I don't think is a thing normally. I don't have an OnlyFans, of course, but of course I don't know I don't know whether or not that's a thing. Somebody who has an OnlyFans will have to confirm that for me, but. Of course, they point out that the algorithm was to keep them coming back. But then they found out but when they actually didn't show up for 2 years, they eventually got desperate and started running out of money and started catering to basically everything that the solar opposites have done. Which, in the hopes that they would make them happy and get them to come back. And, but of course it was revealed that making them happy wouldn't be enough. They decided instead to just help the solar opposites work through their issues, which would make them like Mountain Lake Lodge a lot more. But, of course the solar opposites, but of course Terry points out that obviously it didn't work, and points out that all they've really done is succeed in scaring the hell out of them and messing with them. And Corvo made responses that drive away that if you mess with the solar opposites, a lot of people get hurt, and then they proceed to get into the truck they stole and leave. And of course Katerius at this point wonders if they actually went too far, and Corvo remarks that they probably went right up to the line. But of course, at this point where Jessie points out that now that they're leaving and they have a 6-hour car ride ahead of them, that they might as well talk through their issues, which of course causes them to become very upset because obviously Corvo points out that they lost their favorite vacation spot, and now they have to talk about their issues. But of course Jessie points out that obviously they need to talk about them because obviously it's keeping them from growing as people, and they need to talk about them. They need to talk about their core issues. But of course Corvo points out that obviously they don't really feel like talking about their core issues, and points out that obviously that he was a lot more interested in the algorithm, pointing out that he had been fed things by the algorithm to just kind of make sure he was actually to make sure they were actually given everything they needed, which and of course, after realizing it was a good algorithm, decide to actually go and come back. And then while there's initial panic against the people of Mountain Lodge Lake, who of course immediately panic and immediately think that they've come back to finish the job, then the solar opposites get out and reveal that actually they point out that after going on a bit of a car ride, that they realize now that the algorithm that they were fed was actually pretty cool, but also points out that the people trying to run behind it, they kind of suck, and points out that obviously trying to cater to one specific demographic of people is not a good idea. So their proposal is essentially the people of Mountain Lake Lodge, they return the town back to the way it was originally supposed to be. And in turn, the people of Mountain Lake Lodge just forget the fact that the solar opposites killed 30 people. And of course, after reaching an understanding, they do decide to do that. And then for the B plot, because while they're all on vacation, the wall is actually currently suffering a power outage because obviously a giant centipede thing from the base in the lower levels of the wall wound up biting through the power string that keeps the entire wall running, and winds up shutting the whole thing down. And what we find out is that because of that, things in the wall are apparently a little bit tense. Because there's no power or anything else, it's causing problems. It's causing people to become a lot crankier, and people are trying to do their best to actually just make the best of it while the power gets fixed. But it's the resources are running out, and it's causing problems, and they obviously need to get the wall fixed. And of course Sherry is the first person to point this out, pointing out that obviously they're running out of resources. They need to figure out a way to actually get the power back on. of course, it's at this point where, as it turns out, what is it? Chanel, some woman who worked under both the Duke and Tim and helped him and worked on the power grid. She's the first to offer up a solution, revealing that they actually wired in set up a whole thing where they essentially tapped into the TV plug behind the solar that the replicants watch TV on, and that's how they're getting their power. That's how they've been running the wall. But as she proceeds to go on to explain, someone has either unplugged it or cut through it, and now they have no power. But also explains that there's a bit of a problem, and that's it's on the lower levels, which as we find out, following the Duke flooding the place, have grown a little wild. The people down there have gone a little nuts. And on top of that, it's just completely overgrown, full of muck, full of a whole bunch of other things that are unsanitary conditions to live in, and they have essentially just caused a whole bunch of problems, which of course means it's a little bit wild down there. And of course, Sherry points out that since she's been on the lower levels, she's more than happy to lead a search party down there, but also points out that she needs volunteers. And of course, a guy named Johnson. He comes a guy named Steve. He comes up and he's very much open about the fact that he's more than happy to, because he points out that he's a bit of a hero, and he doesn't really care whose skull he actually bashes in, as long as he gets hot water again. Which and of course Sherry points out that she's happy to have him, but then looks over at a guy with an eye patch who points out that he looks like he would be the kind of badass that they could actually work with, and he merely points out that he actually got his eye messed up because he played 3DS in the dark way too much, which I'm hoping is not a thing, because some people do in fact do that, I think. But of course Sherry points out that he's going, and then points out that he needs one volunteer, and then looks at Hulk, but Hulk then proceeds to just bow out, and Sherry then proceeds to follow him back to his house, where he's in the middle of picking out swatches for their nursery. And of course this calls Sherry walks in and calls Hulk out for not helping, but of course then sees his wife, and she decides to make herself scarce and goes in the nursery while the two of them talk. And what we find out is essentially Hulk doesn't want to go on a suicide mission. He points out that he's trying to build a life for himself. He doesn't want to leave any of that behind. But of course Sherry points out the hypocrisy in his statement, pointing out that she's obviously going to be leaving behind Paisley, although she whispers it to Hulk, but because she doesn't want anybody else finding out. But she remarks that she's taking a big risk because it means that Paisley would actually grow up without either of her parents should she die down in the wall. And of course she points out that obviously also points out that Hulk doesn't seem like he has much of a plan, and but to which Hulk responds that he's actually been trying to take up dancing and has been practicing his splits, but of course she points out that that's just great, and then proceeds to just leave in a huff. But Hulk points out that obviously he's not a hero, he doesn't want to be a hero, but she points out that sometimes some people just are. And at which point she goes off to go to both make sure that the Bohemian Church looks after her daughter, and of course the Bohemian Church will point out that they're more than happy to do it, pointing out that obviously Paisley is their greatest treasure and they need to keep her safe. And of course, satisfied with that, Sherry then proceeds to kiss Paisley on the forehead, and then proceeds to get ready to meet up with the rest of their expedition team to get ready to go down to the wall. And the eye patch guy, he's got a flamethrower. Steve, he's got a massive toothpick that functions as a sword. And of course they point out that, and of course Steve is very excited about the fact that he gets to go down and hurt some people, and reveals that he actually has a tattoo that he made by heating up a stapler, which of course is just a really fun little stencil, because as in by his own admission, they don't know how to draw anything else. But of course, at this point where they see a dark shadow, and they turn around and discover that Hulk actually followed them, and reveals that he's more than happy that he's actually decided to change his mind, and that he's actually coming with, and tells Paisley that he's not going to let one of his best friends go down into the wall without him. So, and appreciating that, Sherry then proceeds to clear the toothpicks that have sanctioned off the lower levels of the wall, and then proceed to go on a spelunking trip down into the lower levels. And And of course, they do wind up going down, but into the wall. But they wind up getting a little bit panicky because first and foremost, they see a GI Joe just crucified to some popsicle sticks, which of course Steve panics because he thinks it's not actually he thinks it's a real person. But then when Hulk points out that it's just an action figure, he's more than satisfied with that, and they continue to wander off. And at which point they continue to go through the wall. They continue to traipse through the muck, and what we find out is that apparently the maps that they're using are basically useless because the lower levels of the wall have just changed that much since they've been down there, and of course, at which point Steve seemingly sees another action figure head, but then discovers that it's actually a real head and starts vomiting, and it's at this point where they start to realize that they're being watched, and sure enough, several people, which are just referred to in the episode as muck people, but they show up and they try to attack the group, but then a guy named Avocado Egg Roll, he shows up and chases them all off and tells them all to get out, and of course tells them to take their muck and leave, and they do. And of course, Hulk is very much appreciative of that, but then discovers that Avocado Egg Roll has no legs, or rather, he doesn't have legs that work. He's as he responds, he has a case of muck foot, which means that his legs are both grown in proportionally and also are kind of little vestigial little things on the bottom of his body. They don't actually support his weight at all. But of course, they wonder how he got his name, and he reveals that he actually gave him himself as a wall name because it turns out he likes avocados, but responds that he actually hates egg rolls. And of course, and points out that obviously that he'd be more than happy to give them to guide them through the wall. But of course, Sherry is hesitant on since they don't really know if they can trust him because they point out some sort of Skyrim side quest bullshit. But Hulk points out that they're more than happy to do it since obviously the maps since as Sherry said the maps are useless, so they might as well. And sure enough, he then proceeds to lead them through the muck. To a lady named to the leader of the wall, which as we find out is actually she's the leader of the lower levels of the wall, and what we find out is that she's actually gone a bit crazy down there, and what we find out is that he actually led them into a trap, and all the muck people actually surround them, and it's at this point where the leader I think Diamond Saphira, but her name is Diamond, is some sort of metal, Platinum, I think. But Platinum then proceeds to tell them that they're not welcome down there, and for the very obvious reason that the upper level seems to have forgotten about them, pointing out that she obviously does not like that, and obviously does not like upper level folks being down in the lower levels of the wall because they've essentially abandoned them, and of course proceeds to tell them that she's more than happy to kill them all, and orders her muck people to surround them and close in. But at which point Sherry immediately leaps into action and puts Platinum to the edge of her knives. But of course Hulk eventually diffuses the situation, pointing out that obviously he doesn't want any bloodshed between either group, and does point out that he's more than happy to work something out. And in a request for safe passage, he asks them if they would like an actual spot on the Parliament that they've built, and of course the Platinum does indeed think that offer over, and after realizing that it would mean that she can finally give the voice to her people, and also finally be part of the bigwigs and actually help out with the management stuff side of things. She does agree to Hulk's request, and decides to actually just let them spend the night, and does also offer them food, which but of course they then wonder what happened to Steve, and she merely responds that he ran off, claiming that he was getting too old for that his life's too short, and that he's not going to deal with the shit, which of course it satisfies him, pointing out that obviously he feels like he actually is, but then Sherry winds up coughing up something that is notably very tattoo-like, and then the eye patch guy, whose name I do not know, he winds up coughing up Steve's insurance card, which makes them Steve's driver's license, which makes him realize that actually they're eating Steve, which of course causes Hulk to call Platinum out on her behavior, pointing out that obviously feeding someone their friend is not a good call and a good look for someone who wants to help run the wall one day. But of course, Platinum merely points out that she was in fact considering Hulk's offer, but then decides that she got a hankering and decided that she's gonna just eat them all instead. And sure enough, then proceeds to attack them. And at which point the group then decides to flee after fighting off the Muck people, and they then proceed to run off and proceed to actually go and fight everybody while Platinum sends all of her Muck people after them. And Hulk at one point gets stuck, and Sherry tries to save them, but then Chanel and the Eye Patch guy, they wind up getting dragged under the Muck. And Sherry is forced to fight off all the Muck people on her own. And that doesn't wind up working because they do eventually corner her and grab her. And at which point Platinum then proceeds to corner Hulk, pointing out that once she's eaten them, she's going to work their way up the upper levels and just eat everybody else. Which isn't a good idea. And Sherry even points that out, but then proceeds to kick up her knives with her feet, and then proceeds to stab both of them, and then proceeds to try and free Hulk, but which while fighting off Platinum. But then the giant centipede from earlier shows up, and then from earlier in the season shows up and eats Platinum, and at which point, and also the several other Muck people that try to attack it, but at which point Eye Patch guy then proceeds to roast it with his flamethrower and wonders what the hell it is. And of course, Sherry reveals that she's not entirely sure what it is, but whatever it is, she's dealt with it, and then proceeds to stab it in the brain to make sure that it doesn't come back and tries to kill them at some point. And says, and now with their full party reconnected, except for Steve, who died tragically. They then proceed to go down to the lowest level, where they actually do find the power supply, the plug. But and Chanel points out that she notes she can fix it, but also points out that she's surprised it isn't a clean break, and notes that internally that obviously she feels like that she's surprised and it's not a clean break because it looks like it's been chewed, and it was, but Chanel doesn't know that. But in case she eventually fixes, she does eventually rewire all the things back together and turns the power back on, and the rest of the wall does finally have power, and of course they're very happy about the fact that they have in fact done their job, but of course as they're about to leave, Eye Patch guy winds up getting eaten by a giant mosquito. It winds up sucking him dry, and then the giant mosquito corners the rest of them, and that's how the episode ends. So yeah, first and foremost, it's this episode points out the fact that it's maybe struck that obviously it does comment on the fact that targeting algorithms toward people is obviously how people get business, but maybe building your business around one group of people, not the best idea. That is essentially what this episode establishes for the A plot. And then the B plot, it just finally establishes what's going on in the wall. In specifically the lower levels. It just explains that the lower levels because they were flooded by the Duke. They've grown a little wild, they've grown a little flooded, and as a result of that, several wild creatures, mainly insects, but several wild creatures, and also the people that used to live in the lower levels, have gone a little feral and have gone crazy. So methinks Yummy and Jesse need to clean out the lower levels a little bit, because that's a mess. Obviously the replicants aren't really interested in doing that. They're just interested in seeing the wall people do their whole thing and haven't really done anything with the lower levels or anything else. But no, I do kind of find it interesting that is in fact a thing. It does finally address what's going on inside the wall. It does finally address that, yes, because the Duke had actually flooded the lower levels, it's gone a little bit wild, and that's what the cause of conflict for this episode, or for this season, I guess. But in any case, that is in fact going to do it for my review of Solar Opposites. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. If you want to see updates with those are the best way to do that. Be sure to check out my Twitch as well. I stream every Sunday, so go check those out. And then also be sure to go and check out my Patreon as well to help fund future projects and a whole bunch of other things. Go check out my, and just go check out all my other things. But Finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent one. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for watching. Just go check that out. Bottom video is based on what you've already seen from me. So yeah, based on what you've already seen from me, or if you want to try something new, just go check out those out. They'll probably be fun. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!